rose ceremony, the fantasy suites holy matrimony. Oh, won't you please take this rose? Hey everybody, and welcome back to Buns and Roses, my Bachelor Recap podcast. My name is Snax the Bunny, and it's Fantasy Suites Week. Ooh. I got my sexy red background, and I'm here with some sexy people that I'm going to introduce to you right now. First off, we have Clinton McClung. Hi, Clinton.
Hi, it's great to be here.
It's great having you here. Clinton McClung is a film and event curator who has brought music video sing-alongs to Central Cinema, presented weird midnight events, as well as music and film collaborations at the Seattle International Film Festival, and produced Isabella Price's horror and burlesque program Nocturnal Emissions at the Northwest Film Forum. During the pandemic, he has been sitting in his basement making weird video montages and is very excited about his newest project, Artsy Fartsy Cinema. Okay, Clinton, tell us about this new project.
Basically, I have always wanted to redo the movie Remains of the Day with a fart track instead of the original soundtrack. And I finally been able to make that dream come true.
Did you get a Remains of the Day lunchbox for this situation?
I should get one. Yeah.
Yeah. And what is your Bachelor journey, Clinton?
This was my first full episode of The Bachelor. I'd seen clips of it before, usually on The Soup with Joel McHale, that sort of thing.
Oh my God.
So I know the mechanizations of it, but this was my first full dive into it.
Wow. Well, welcome. Congratulations. I'm so excited for you.
It was a wonderful episode to start with.
I think so too. Okay. Thanks, Clinton. Next, we have Virginia Jones. Hey, Virginia.
Hi, Snax.
Virginia Jones is an LA comic who's appeared on IFC and the History Channel. Please check out her TikTok at Badinia. Is that how you say it?
Badinia, exactly right,
Badinia.
Snax.
Yeah. She has 550 followers, which is more than anyone has ever had before. I mean, that's true. I've never seen more than 550 followers on any page.
That's right.
It's real.
You're going to have 551 soon. I'm just going to, spoiler alert, tell you that. I'm following you on TikTok. Virginia, tell me about your Bachelor journey.
Well, I feel great about being on this episode with Clinton because I've also never watched The Bachelor before. I did watch 2 episodes back. So I started with Victoria getting kicked out of the house for calling someone else a whore. And then someone else got kicked out of the house for calling someone else a whore.
Yeah.
And now it's today.
Yeah, they even said slore, which is a slut and a whore hybrid.
Both things.
Missed that terminology.
Why didn't anyone think of that before?
Yeah. Well, because it's referenced in Ghostbusters. Or even do battle with a mighty slore, which is a slut and a whore. But yeah, I learned a lot, and none of it was good.
Oh. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm also really happy to have you here. And you know what? I'm just going to say it. I'm excited for your Bachelor journey. All right. And last but not least, we have Nenu Ramadan. Hey, Nenu.
Hello, people. Beautiful people.
Nenu is the creator, singer, and songwriter for Goodnight Cairo. She is passionate about working with dogs for her new career and is an amateur baguette maker. She thinks she is a kitten. Well, I don't know, Nenu, if you've seen that there are some Zoom filters and Snapchat filters where you can turn into...
I really dropped the ball on that one.
Yeah.
Dropped the ball.
I have to say, Nenu makes a mean baguette. And you just released a video last week. Tell us about that.
That's true. Yeah, I did a cover of Fascination Street / Running Up the Hill by Kate Bush.
What? We'll hear that.
You gotta check it out.
We'll link to that in the notes. You link to that video and you check it out. It's really good stuff. And Nenu is, I mean, I'm just going to say it. You're my #1 fan.
Oh, it's true.
It's true.
I love you, Snax.
Yeah, Nenu.
I feel like such a fangirl right now.
You'll see Nenu at most of my shows. She's my #1 fan. So, wow, guys, we are here. It's Fantasy Suite Week. I can't believe it. But I can believe it because this season also feels like it's gone on for an eternity. We have, hey, look, we've got.
Hey, look, we got a cat.
Oh my goodness!
For those of you that are listening to the audio version, Virginia is now showing off her TikTok, Zoom, Snapchat skills with a lovely cat filter. And it's very fetching. It's very nice on you.
Thank you.
Very.
Very. Okay, so I like to, before we get into the beat by beat of the episode, I like to just get everyone's just general feelings and thoughts about the episode out of the way. And I'm so curious about the two of you who have never seen a full episode. What were your impressions overall of watching your first full episode of The Bachelor?
First of all, I'd like to say that I'm honored to finally be a part of the Bachelor Nation. I can't believe it's been 20 years before I was even invited. So I think that's pretty great.
Thank you for accepting my rose.
Oh, you're welcome. You know what's great is I thought I purposefully went into this episode without knowing anything about the season and then caught up afterwards on who some of the people were and what their journeys had been.
Nice strategy.
And going into it completely blind, I thought it was way more genuine and sweet than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the episode, I realized that was all bullshit facade.
Pretty much.
So I feel like I went on a real journey in one episode.
I'm so curious to know at what part of your journey did the worm turn, and did the scales fall from your eyes? Because I really want to know.
I think it was when he met up with Bree. Sorry, I wrote BRI, so I kept referring to her as Bri during the whole episode.
But that's Brian, and you know that.
Rise before guys.
Really like the cheese.
Right. I would like to see a Bri in this episode, to be honest. But so I think it was when Bree ran up to Matt and jumped on him, and they just kissed really hard. And I was like, wait a minute. I thought he was with the other guy. I mean, I know the premise of the show, but I didn't realize they got that serious before they made the choice, and that was a little disturbing, to be honest.
I'm with you. I've seen this show so many times. That never feels normal to watch that. I think it's really weird too.
It's squicky. It feels squicky.
Yeah,
Squicky.
that's a good word for it. Squicky.
Yeah. I'm not crying. I promise.
But for about 15 minutes, I thought it was a very sweet and genuine show. And
you're like oatmeal baths. I love this.
Right,
yes.
right.
I'm ready for that.
Virginia, what about you? What were your impressions of your first Bachelor episode?
So I thought from the jump that it was psychological torture for these three women.
Yeah.
And I have so many fucking questions, and I'm sure it goes this way every time, but I'm naive, so like the one he chooses eventually will watch this episode.
Yes.
Where he's saying the same stuff to the other two. Yeah. And it's just like, so in a little bit of like psychological, game theory, right? So The Bachelor is based on this premise of false scarcity. Mm-hmm. So you have these 25 women and you say there's only one guy.
Right.
And you have a series of, they call them cocktail parties, but they're just terrible because there's no drinks and there's no food and there's one guy.
There's definitely drinks.
Oh.
You don't see them that much, though.
You don't see them that much. So it's just like these women in these ball gowns, and like in scarcity theory, women will behave more aggressively the less available men are. So if you want to see girls pretend to be lesbians and be very open to a threesome, you want to go to New York City and in San Francisco. If you want to see women wear no makeup and
hold on, I'm taking notes really quick here. What was it again?
Clinton. He's got to write it down.
Go to Anchorage, Alaska, and you're going to see women who don't even, shave or wear skirts. So, yeah, my first impression of The Bachelor is whoever The Bachelor is, he is a psychopath, undeserving of love.
I love that take. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to have you on this journey. Thank you for accepting my rose. Nenu, your overall impressions, you're a veteran. You've seen it before.
She's seen it all.
I am. I've seen it all.
This Fantasy Suite episode, what were your overall feelings?
I felt like I knew what was going to happen. And I was like, oh, this is so in the bag. You know, this person's like, I thought for sure I knew what was going to happen. And it did take me on some twists and turns that I was not expecting. I was happy with the lack of the turtleneck, though.
Okay, yeah. The
turtleneck.
We didn't miss the turtleneck this week.
I did not miss the turtleneck. I felt like it was a really entertaining episode. I was kind of tired of the pouting, but at the same time, I guess they're in love. I guess.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that, and let's get into it. Let's get into the beat by beat of this episode. The first thing we see on the screen, if you're watching with subtitles, is the descriptor, owls hooting.
I immediately wanted to know if this show was filmed in a haunted house.
So
even better, Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
It's-
this is the thing. Okay, this is the thing, and here's a big point that I'd like to make. Well, first of all, this is a really interesting location. I think this chateau at Nemacolin in Pennsylvania, it's unlike anywhere they've done a Bachelor season before. It's got some creepy, spooky, autumnal northeast vibes into it. I really wish they had leaned into it a little bit more. The only time they really reference it is the fact that, like, they're always wearing outerwear and turtlenecks, and they're in the woods, and they dressed up as squirrels the one time.
Do you think they made up for that this episode by having a Pennsylvania Dutch spa day?
I mean, yeah, here's the thing.
We wouldn't know that they were in Pennsylvania otherwise.
No place else has that kind of spa day. I mean, that was so specific.
It was Schrute Farms from The Office. It was Dwight Schrute. I mean, that's what it was. That's where they had their date, was Schrute Farms. But normally when I watch a season of The Bachelor and I watch one of the dates, especially towards the end, I am jealous of what they're doing. And I don't think there's been one moment in this whole season where they have planned a date that made me jealous. I mean, was anyone...
Not even the goat milking snacks?
I don't know. I mean...
Pancakes? Come on.
But they didn't look like very good pancakes.
They didn't. You're right.
No.
I mean,
Skydiving.
I didn't have as much
Terrifying.
FOMO as
Terrible idea.
I wanted to have more FOMO, I think.
Sure.
But yeah.
It's hard to have. It's hard to create FOMO in a pandemic, though. And I was going to ask you, Snax, and you, Nenu, how has this season felt different?
So I think it's actually easy to get FOMO in a pandemic because we're all locked at home and anything sounds great. And so
I was saying it's hard to create FOMO.
I don't know. I kind of feel the opposite. I feel like,
I think it's easier.
I'm like, they can hug each other. They can be in the same room. They can
they can meet their families.
Yeah. Like, they could have a cocktail together in the same place, like full body experience.
So Snax, you're just not craving any of those experiences at that particular location.
I wasn't jealous of these dates, and I haven't been jealous of any of the dates all season, and I just want to be jealous is all. Normally it's just a very glamorous experience with lots of things that you could never normally do in a normal dating life, and this season just hasn't been that. But that's
maybe you need to learn a few lessons from Rachel.
Yeah.
And really grasp onto that jealousy and make it a part of your story.
I think I need to lean into my jealousy more in general. I think that's a really healthy thing for me to do. So we start off, we see just these shots of Pennsylvania and stuff, and we are doing a montage of the women talking about what their week is going to be like with Matt, and they're all excited. At one point when Bree was talking about how excited she was about Matt, if you didn't have your subtitles on, it sounds like she says, Matt is such an amazing, incredible, and pathetic person. But she said empathetic.
Empathetic.
But it sounded like she said and pathetic person, and it really made me laugh.
Also
Yeah.
correct. I think possibly correct.
Yeah.
Possibly, yeah. Possibly. I'm feeling that.
And then they're in the living room kind of talking to each other about the week, and Chris walks in, and he makes the point that, wow, at one point this season, we got to 38 women. 38 women.
Wow.
Do you remember all their names?
I mean, yes, I do.
Of course.
How could I forget?
Can I say something about Chris Harrison?
Yes, you can.
I didn't know anything about the scandal around him, of what was going down, or like his whole history with The Bachelor, how much money he makes, what his role is. All I know is this was the first time I ever saw him, and my wife, who was watching with me, and I both had reactions at the same time when he first walked on screen. And mine was to go, creepy, and hers was to go, he is completely coked up. So
Same thing. Sort of same.
I think I understand the Chris Harrison vibe just from his walk on.
Yeah.
That's his vibe. And 38 women, though. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
How did they pair? I'm sorry, I didn't watch the whole season. How did they pare down from that many women? He didn't get time to get to know them at all.
Yeah, there's a lot of group dates where many of them go do a thing. And yeah, some women get eliminated who he never gets to have one-on-one time with. And it's just such a flawed system in so many ways. I don't know why they keep defending this process, because it's like there's nothing about this that makes sense. And we'll talk about that more as we get into the weird psychological gauntlet that is Fantasy Suites Week.
And it feels Snax like there's been a lot of producer influence. Like, okay, so we wound up with one clearly biracial person, one what they call ethnically ambiguous woman, and then one person who looks like backup emergency Mila Kunis. It's just weird.
Yeah.
You never know when you're going to need a Mila Kunis,
When you're going to need a Rachel to step in for Mila Kunis.
You need that, yeah. I'm glad they covered that ground, though.
They found her from Mila's on Wheels.
She's a millennial. I don't know. Yeah, never mind.
Okay, so after that montage and after Chris kind of announces what the week's going to be like, we cut to Matt pacing in his house, and he is waiting for the arrival of his father. And he keeps saying that there's something he has to do before he takes this big step. And without this step, he, quote, doesn't know what commitment looks like. And he keeps saying, what does it look like? What does commitment look like? This whole thing with the father, I don't think that we should be watching this. I don't think that this was the way to handle this.
No way.
What did you guys think about the father of it all? Let's start with Nenu.
I felt it was so forced. It didn't feel like his decision. I definitely felt like, I don't know, just because I'm not a fan of Chris.
You didn't think it was Matt's decision?
No, I don't think it was Matt's decision. I feel like maybe it's because I'm not a fan of Chris Harrison that I feel like he got bullied into doing this. Mm-hmm. And I just felt like it was not a good look for the show, because I felt like it was okay, now I had this conversation and now I can move on with my life. Right, tie it up with a ribbon.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't a fan of this. I didn't like that this carried on through the whole episode. Mm-hmm. And I just felt like it just felt very forced, and it didn't feel like it was something he wanted to do.
Yeah. Virginia?
Yeah, I agree with that. What I thought was interesting about it is Matt makes a couple of references in this episode about the fact that he has had trouble maintaining relationships.
Yeah.
And the idea that he would meet up with his estranged father in an Airbnb for 45 minutes and then it's just solved. The odds are so slim for these, they're all talking I'm going to meet my forever husband. And I just really feel like this is the man I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. It's bitch, have you seen the stats? It's 11% success rate.
Yeah.
And the if Matt, Matt feels like the thing that's been holding him back is a brief, tete-a-tete with his dad who cheated on his mom. something stinks, you know? It's like if you get to a certain age and you found that you haven't had a lot of long-term relationships, you have the spinning finger of blame has to come back to you.
Exactly. I agree with that. Totally. Clinton?
I find daddy issues to be incredibly dull and rote, and the whole thing felt really scripted. I didn't feel like any of the emotion was real at all. And I got really excited when they mentioned Chuck E. Cheese. I don't know why, but
it's real.
And when after the conversation, he was talking about the thing with his dad, and he said, or I think it was at the end of the conversation, he said, "I don't want pizza." I immediately screamed, "Everybody wants pizza."
I know that was a red flag for me. I thought that Matt James was like a kind of a cool guy, kind of a nice guy.
Yeah.
When he said he didn't eat pizza, I don't know if I can trust him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a guy who you think he's playing the angles a little bit.
And he's a man who always looks like, he always gives the impression of holding a football, even though there's not a football visible.
It's a phantom football.
The way he stands, it just feels like there's always a ghost football.
He was a football player, right? A college football player?
Yeah. I don't know exactly which sport it was because I'm not a sport, but I I remember Joe Bill, he was on episode 2 of this podcast, and he very aptly pointed out that Matt talks like an athlete. Like a post-game athlete, like he's gonna go out in the field, gonna give it the all, and it's just all these like kind of, empty sort of statements.
Well, I looked him up on Wikipedia earlier, and he was a football player in college.
Okay. Oh,
so
there it is.
Full circle.
Did anyone think it was interesting how much shorter his dad was than Matt?
I was like, is this your real dad? How is this happening? You know?
Yeah.
I was like, did you just get an actor to play his dad? And also, I think I would have preferred pizza, though, you know? If someone gave me the option.
Of a dad versus pizza?
Have
I will take pizza.
Have a conversation with your estranged dad. Or pizza and shoes. I would choose pizza and shoes.
The other weird thing about that conversation is that it was a word salad conversation. I could not figure out what Matt wanted. He didn't know what he wanted. He didn't know why he was having that conversation. And then at the end, he was like, "Thanks, it's all solved." It didn't make any sense.
It did feel like my first therapy. It was like, he was just like, I wonder why I have a hard time with commitment. And then he talked to somebody and they're like, well, maybe it's coming from feelings that you had about your dad and stuff. And he's like, I better talk about that with my dad before I try to marry somebody. It's such a kind of naive way of dealing with a very complex issue, because he's not just dealing with the aftermath of what his father did. He's dealing with what that did to his brain and how he's conditioned to continuing forward with a pattern where he's not able to commit to things. But I just have to say, I felt pretty bad for this dad because I don't think he knew what he was stepping into. He walks into the house and he's just like, "Oh wow, you're doing great. This is what a great place." And he's talking about celebrating Matt's success, and Matt's just got this really serious look on his face, and he's like, I've been scared of commitment my whole life. And his dad's just like, you're fine, you got it.
Yeah, I thought you just hit 500 on Instagram, and here what?
550.
You're living large. You're living large. I didn't like that the dad said that he was like, well, nobody's perfect. And I wish you knew what I'd been through. I lost my dad at 5 years old. And I just kind of felt like I didn't feel bad for the dad in that moment.
No.
Well,
it didn't make me feel bad.
He was very defensive and he didn't need to be. But I don't think he knew what he was stepping into with all these cameras around.
Sure.
I don't think he knew he was going to have that conversation with Matt. So in that sense, I did feel bad for him because, I kind of wish that Matt had thought about this very thing right before he went on the show and said, you know what, before I try to marry one of 38 women, maybe I should talk to my dad about some stuff. Why did he wait until there were cameras and everything to have
So at this point, at this point in the history of The Bachelor, does anybody actually go on this show to find love, or are they just trying to find fame?
No, I mean, they do, or they say they do. You know, we
Mhm.
can't really know. But I mean, last season, Tasha and Zach, they ended up together. They're still together, and they're really happy and excited. And I don't think
That's
you'll
great.
ever hear them say anything different. But there's a lot more stories of it not being successful. But I mean, there are people that still come to it with a pure heart, so to speak. You know.
I think
I
one of
thought
the
it-
reasons go ahead.
Just on what Snax was saying, like one thing that turned me off about the dad immediately was when Matt said, "Well, and you left my fucking mom," and his dad was like, his dad was like, "She left me." Well,
Yeah.
she left you because you were cheating on her. Like,
Right,
we're adults. Like, don't throw that defense mechanism out. Like,
And I think totally like that conversation. I think he should have had that conversation with his dad, but did he have to have it on The Bachelor? Like,
right.
and
Yeah.
kind of humiliate his dad at the same time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it just kind of adds this layer to that conversation that I don't think it really needed, and I don't think America needed to see it. And also, there's been, you know, a lot of disappointment in the Black community that this show chose to tell a story about a Black father who was absentee because
Yeah.
it plays into a stereotype. And there's a lot of talk about that and how they kind of wish that The Bachelor had sort of dealt with this differently or not aired it or something. So I don't know.
Yeah. And they start the episode with it too. So it just feels like, you know, you're starting with that. And so
Yeah.
it kind of carries through. You feel that heaviness throughout the episode.
Yeah.
And so I feel like this episode was especially kind of heavy.
Yeah, and he brings it up on every date, which I thought was
Yeah.
interesting that the editors didn't edit it out of some of the like we've already heard
Right.
this.
I don't know.
Right.
I felt like that was calculated. Like he
Yeah.
had to bring it up on every date, you know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
Oh yeah, like you think that they wanted him to?
Yeah, like the producers were trying to like make more happen by
Mhm.
creating
Yeah.
this sort of background
Maybe.
drama.
Yeah, maybe.
I can see that.
I felt like that really threw Bree under the bus because on their one-on-one, he was like, and then a thing we have in common, and she's like, shitty dads, right? And
Yeah.
like and then, you know, spoiler alert, she doesn't get the rose, and she was like, I thought we really connected on that whole shitty dads thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for real.
So the first one-on-one is with Michelle, and we get this you know, this spa day. It's a creepy cabin with some hay bales and some
You know what I did not
There's-
expect the first date to be?
what?
Greco-Roman wrestling. I did not think that they were just going to go right to let's oil people up and make them
Yeah.
make them wrestle. That was pretty amazing.
Yeah, they went for it. I don't know. Michelle just seems like such a good sport, and like she's game for basically anything, and she seems to be having a good time all the time. So she's the perfect person for this.
I love her. I mean, I
Yeah.
just met her the other night and
I know.
instantly was like, this girl is awesome.
Yeah, she's super sweet.
Mhm.
My note for this date was hot buttered rum.
I
It
looked
made me
that
want
up.
it made me want hot buttered rum. And I thought it was really uncomfortable how much he liked being in that oatmeal. Did anyone else feel
Ugh.
and even Michelle was like, wow, you really like that oatmeal.
Really
like, she
into
was
it,
like,
man.
Yeah. When they said Pennsylvania, oh, sorry, go ahead, Snax.
Oh, for me, just the ASMR of it all was really terrible. I couldn't handle listening to the sounds of the
The-
oatmeal and the
yeah,
like. There
the
were
butter
so
sounds.
many gross sounds in
Do you know what
Yeah.
I think was missing from that Pennsylvania Dutch spa day
pretzels.
was a Dutch
Flour?
oven. I was waiting the whole
Oh,
time
yeah.
for a Dutch oven, which
Mhm.
after getting buttered and milked and being in the oatmeal, like get under the covers and fart a bunch.
Or
That's
a little
exactly
bit
what you're
of-
supposed to do.
A little bit of fudge packing. Everybody knows they make fudge.
Oh my god. Okay, this is going off the rails.
I just learned what that meant.
Respect
So
for the Amish. I mean, come on.
But yeah, he seemed to really like enjoy the oatmeal, and then they were in the milk, and then they were like making out in the milk, and there was just mouth sounds and butter
Very odd.
sounds. It was not okay.
There was a lot of sounds.
I'm
Yeah.
lactose intolerant, so I didn't
Right.
really like that very much.
So you did
Who
not
knew that it was
tolerate-
going to be the
didn't
ingredients for?
tolerate
Who knew that those were going to be the ingredients for love, though?
Yeah.
Yeah, lactose.
Lactose.
That's why I haven't found love, you guys, because of
Yeah.
lactose.
Mhm.
Oats. You know, you gotta sow your wild oats.
Oh
Little
yeah.
Miss Muffet.
Oh,
So yeah, and then they have anything else about the spa part of their date.
Oof.
I mean,
Mm.
when
Oh,
did they?
Oh,
Go ahead.
I loved how she's like, it feels like home, and I was like, being in a bath of milk feels like home. I was like, okay, home is where your heart is.
I mean,
So,
have you tried it? I mean, it might feel like home.
You're right. I haven't tried it.
You
I
are
should-
you are a cat.
I am a kid.
yeah, you would love that if you were a cat. I mean,
You would be at home.
I'm not a cat, you guys. Shit.
Oh.
She's learned now. She learned.
So
it.
at this point, at the end of this date, I have a question.
Yes.
Is the Bachelor contractually not allowed to say "I love you" back to any of these women?
So
Because he says so many things other than "I love you" back to
Around.
them.
Hmm.
So it used to be that they weren't allowed to say that, and then
Like nobody was
Contestants.
allowed to say that.
yeah, like the lead couldn't
Okay.
say it back to somebody.
Okay.
But then people started doing it, and they started making that the way that they let the front runner know that they are into them. And so the fact that he only says it back to Rachel has sort of been something that everyone's been taking note of. And the fact
Mhm.
that the only thing he can bring himself to say to the other women is, thank you for telling me that, or whatever. Thank you for your feedback, or
Or just like
thank you for sharing.
making
Or,
out.
I am falling in love with a bunch of these women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not a hard, fast rule anymore. But the women could just as easily assume that the reason why they haven't heard it from him is because he's adhering to the rules of the show.
Mhm.
Mhm.
They don't know that he is saying it to anybody else because they just assume he hasn't said it to anybody. You know what I mean? Okay. So they go to dinner after they have the oatmeal situation,
Mhm.
and
Dinner after oatmeal. I mean,
Who
it seems
has an
right.
appetite?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Who has the time?
I know, God, so much lactose and fat. They go to dinner, and Matt tells Michelle his stuff about his dad, and and then they end up getting the card that says, should you choose to forego your individual rooms, here's a key to the fantasy suite. Blah, blah.
Here's an antique key to a ghost's coffin.
And
Yes.
that creeped me out. The weird handwriting
Mhm.
that sometimes is supposed to be Matt's, and
Right.
sometimes is just from someone else. Like that's
Yeah.
so creepy. Who's
I would not have been surprised if that had been the key to a morgue. You know what I mean?
I love how he takes the fake food and he moves the plate and the food doesn't move at all. It's just glued to the plate, and then underneath it's ooh, sneaky. He has the date card, and I just thought
Yeah.
that was so funny. It was just he's like
a historical reference, ladies, and Lady and Bunny. Has anyone ever foregone the fantasy suite?
I think so.
I
I
think
think
there
so.
might have been one person, and I don't remember.
I
It's
think
just
it's
like I'm
happened.
not into it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I
Yeah.
think I remember that happening. I
don't
think she was maybe pretty religious.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
might have been. Was it Maddie?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Anyway,
But yes, that has
sidebar.
happened.
Good question though.
Yeah. So they do the fantasy suite, and this is the first one in the episode, and we're like, okay, seems like they like each other, and it's happening. And then the next morning, they seem very excited about each other, and then the producers now have required them all to parade around each other in their walk of shame.
I
Awful.
know. Terrible.
So Michelle returns back to the chateau, and Rachel and Bree are sitting there, and they are forced to ask her how the date went and what they did, and they do not want to hear about it.
Yeah.
Michelle tries to be polite and just kind of talk about the silly parts of the date. She's like, "Oh, we had a spa day, and we put butter on each other," and
I thought she did a pretty good job of that.
Yeah. she did.
Yeah.
But, you know, it didn't, like, no matter what she was saying, it was going to hit Rachel and Bree in a hard way, because that's just a really rough thing.
Right. If you try to put yourself in the position of any of the women where a guy that you have been psychologically tortured into being in love with, and like you have to listen to another woman go, yeah, so I rode his dick. It was great, and and I really think like our relationship has progressed, and poor Rachel being the third, like she's basically like, this is a situation and I have to fuck my way out of it.
Yeah.
Like it's gross. I was very disturbed by all those scenes.
Yeah.
I felt that Michelle dealt with it very very well, though. It made
The
me
best
really
she could.
It really made me like her, because she's like, I can see by your faces that this is really uncomfortable. And because it is, like, I like the fact that she made mention that it's a very uncomfortable situation. And that made me really like her, because I was just like, you know, she could have bragged a little bit, but she didn't do that. You know, she kept it classy.
I in no way mean to silence any women, but I think Rachel was full of shit. Like, I did not buy her performance. It was so it was so performative. And I do think that whole setup is fucking creepy and awful.
Right.
But I think she was just kind of driving attention toward herself, like every time the camera was on. It's kind of the vibe I get from her.
Yeah, and you know, and it's true.
But has that been her journey this season?
Well, what's strange about her journey this season for me is that she, like, suddenly has these deeper than deep feelings for Matt, and we didn't ever see that come to pass. Like, we never saw their courtship. We saw them kind of making
Snax,
eyes at each other a lot. Like,
what about the episode where he pretended to buy her a pair of Louboutins?
I mean, like, but when do we actually see them connect? You know, other than just being crazy attracted to each other, which they clearly are. I'm not invested in their story, but also I don't buy that she is in as deep as she is. I think that she's really exaggerated her feelings, and so for that, I do kind of think she's full of shit a little bit, or she's just very young and doesn't really know, you know.
Yeah, I was kind of taken by. I was kind of surprised by how young everybody is when their ages popped up. I was like, oh, this is such a raw emotional age. Like
21-year-old, holy shit.
Yeah, everything meets the world, but also it doesn't. You know, it's so weird.
Yeah, like at one point Rachel was like, oh, this is like the worst thing I've ever been through in my life, and I'm so in love with Matt, but we didn't see the ramp up, like what Snax was saying. We didn't see the ramp up to that. It just kind of felt like it appeared.
But every woman is in love with Matt, because every woman has been set up to be in love with Matt. It's and here's where I mean, like, the psychological torture. Like, he is set up as the only achievement, and they have very little time with him, and they're competing for time with him. So, like, I believe that every woman thinks she's in love with Matt, like, because they know so little of him, they're able to project whatever they want, like fill in the chinks.
Yeah.
So I think that every woman in that house is like, I love him. None of them know him.
No, I love him.
I love him more.
Virginia?
Stop it.
Virginia, I want you to make a 7-part investigative podcast about the cult that is The Bachelor. I would listen to the shit out of that.
It's super fucked up.
And you're absolutely right about all of that. Like, the scarcity mentality, and just the, you know, and all the tricks that you would use on someone that you were trying to psychologically break down. It's like, you isolate them, you deprive them of sleep, you deprive them of food, water, whatever. You give them alcohol when they're, like, pretty wired and, like, pretty out of it. And they end up being loopy and not really knowing, you know, their ass from their elbow. And they just think that all they can see is Matt, and it's just this Matt worship. And it makes
if this show ends like the movie Midsommar, then I'm okay with that.
I haven't seen it, but
I haven't seen it either.
But I'm sure lots of other people got that reference. Okay, I want to now go to Bree's date. So Bree was the second date. She
was forced into nature.
She's they
Yeah.
continuously put her in nature. She was.
She hates it.
And it was funny that she questioned it because she's like, "Why do I always have these dates?" She didn't get the shopping date, and I'm sure she would have loved that.
Yeah,
I thought that was really unfair to make her go pitch a tent in the woods.
Yeah, she's really indoorsy, so why would you do that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and it's so weird. This date, this is what I'm talking about. This is the fantasy suite date. They make you pitch a tent in the woods that you're not even going to use. Not that I would have wanted to stay in the tent, but like, what was the purpose of that date? I'm not sure.
There were a lot of like sexual innuendos in that
Yeah.
scene. He was like, "Be careful of the big snakes," and then like she helps him pitch the tent,
That's
and
true.
he's like, "I wouldn't be able to get it up without you." And she's like, "You mean the tent?" And he's like,
I know.
"Yeah."
There's so much innuendo.
That's true.
It's so
The whole
dumb.
thing was innuendo.
It was
wasn't
just
it?
an innuendo
It was-
setup.
It was like someone's joke that they were like, "Yeah, let's make that the date." I don't know.
But
Yeah.
do you know what made me realize that Matt was evil? Was when he could not make a s'more. Like, what
Yeah.
kind of a monster?
The weird
Fucking
s'more
monster.
experimentation. What the F? That's not American.
That's
Not okay.
wrong.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, I have a lot of red flags about the pizza, the s'mores. We got a lot to talk about with Matt.
No, I for a while, my roommate and I were on Tinder at the same time, and she was always swiping right on these guys with abs, and I'm like, just know that he's never going to have a beer with you. He's never going to eat a sandwich. He's going to go to bed at 8:00. Like, he's no fun.
Yeah, abs
Yeah.
equal zero fun. Let's face it.
Zero fun.
You need them carbs.
You need them carbs. Okay, Bree's date. Anyone have any notes about the daytime or the dinner portion of Bree's date?
During the dinner portion of the date, I did notice that she was really trying to like engage him in a real conversation.
Yeah.
She's like, how are you feeling right now about, potentially getting engaged? And every single time he's confronted with a real question, he just goes, and then blah, 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 my dad, blah, 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 my
Yeah.
dad. And it's
Deflect.
like, she's really asking like a question that we all want to know the answer to.
Yeah.
And he doesn't give us that answer.
And he also seems thrown and slightly uncomfortable anytime anyone mentions the fact that this is supposed to end in an engagement. Like he's like, oh, that? Yeah, right.
It's the whole premise of the show.
Yeah,
And
it's actually what it's called.
Is
Yeah,
that, wait,
it's just like-
I'm a what now? This is very confusing.
That was weird to me. I
Yeah.
really wanted him to answer her question, and he didn't at all.
Yeah, I think in general, Bree has really shown up for him, and she's put herself out there and with her family, and she's been very open, and her communication style is very mature, and she just seems like such a put together person. And he just kind of seems like he doesn't really quite know himself very well, or not enough to match her,
Mm-hmm.
I honestly, during that date, was like, actively did not want him to pick her because I thought she could do so much better than Matt.
Oh, definitely.
A good
Exactly.
observation.
Exactly. So yeah. So I mean, that's
Although that made me, this was also the point, watching this for the first time, this was also the point too, during this date where I had just seen what happened with Michelle.
yeah.
And I was like, oh, this guy is completely insincere. Like he will perform this act for all three of these women over the course of the show, which he does.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, I don't trust anything he says, man.
No.
Yeah.
And then he'll like, his way of getting out of it is to just like start making out with them. Like his face is just coming towards them, just like,
Oh, right. Let's talk about my dad or make out. Or both, I guess, at the same time.
Yeah.
Every
They do
time.
that?
A
Every
little later, he said he makes reference, and he was like, "I just want to be fair to all the women. I want to let them all know, like
They all get a taste of this.
They all get a taste of this, and it's such a strange feeling. Like I did feel a little bit of pity for Matt, but it was replaced immediately with just like notes of his insincerity, and this whole thing is performative, which is what he's been doing his whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just watched Bridgerton, And every time there was a sex scene in Bridgerton, my wife and I would get really excited and start jumping up and down, be like, they're going to the bone zone. And this show made me feel the opposite of that.
Right. Please stay out of the bone zone.
Yeah, like please shut, like don't even shut the door. Just leave, just get out.
Yeah. Oh, Virginia's leaving. Virginia, not you, Virginia.
But Snax, I'm not trying to shit on the whole show or anything.
You
Like
can,
people
though.
really
It's
love
fine.
The Bachelor, and is that because it's so creepy, or what is it about The Bachelor that has really gripped people? I mean, it's been on for 20 years.
For me, it's just that every time I say I'm not going to watch a season of it, I end up getting sucked in
Mhm.
because something crosses over into the
Uh-huh.
news or on Twitter that strikes my interest, and I end up getting sucked in every time. They
One
just-
thing I thought watching it for the first time is that the show is kind of a soap opera. It's
Yeah.
filmed the same style as a soap
Mhm.
opera. All the
Mhm.
people on it look like soap opera actors, and it has that same kind of like emotional pull happening all the time.
Like soft lighting and like candlelight.
And a bunch
Yeah.
of kissing and hookups and stuff. You know,
Yeah.
that's a soap opera.
Yeah.
I feel like this season is especially more creepy. I feel like Matt is he's not very open. And I feel like some of the girls are skeptical. You see more skepticism, I think, in this season than I've seen in a while. I don't know if that's just me, but
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this is the era of the show where people know they can go on and get social media famous. And
Mhm.
so they're kind of just like, well, it's a win-win-win-win-win. I'm going to either go there and get a bunch of followers and get kind of famous, or I'm going to go there and get a bunch of followers and get kind of famous and make some friends and get on to Bachelor in Paradise. Or
Right.
I'm going to get on there, make a bunch of friends, and maybe get into the top whatever. And if I don't get picked by Matt, maybe I'm the Bachelorette. Like there's all these things that it can turn into.
They're
So I think-
contingency plans.
Yeah, there's lots of
So do you
there's
think
lots of
that?
possible outcomes.
Do you think that's why is Michelle there?
I mean, I get the sense that she's pretty genuine and that she really wanted to go for it with Matt.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's kind of the feeling I got.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's been my favorite contestant. I think Bree is up there too. There was a lot of women that I really liked on this season. But yeah, I mean, with Bree, it just really seemed like she really, really cared for him and put herself out there, and nothing seemed wrong about their connection. It just was in comparison to the other two. Apparently, it just wasn't there. But any other
His-
thoughts about Bree's date before we move on to the last one?
I was going to say that Dora the Explorer burn made me laugh out loud. That was pretty good.
yeah. Yeah. I really thought that she was gonna, I thought that they had a really good connection, but then now when I look back at it and I maybe watch it a second time, I think I was wrong about that.
You know what I think was weird is that outtake that they put at the very end of the episode told me a lot more about that date than any of the stuff that was in the episode.
Oh yeah.
And
Which I
that's,
thought
a
was
typ-
kind of
that's
interesting.
very typical of
Mm.
this era of the show, is that they're showing you more about the personalities in the bloopers and in the outtakes than they show you throughout the whole episode.
Do you think they do that on purpose to sort of keep
Right,
the suspense going?
They set
Like
you up
who's
for
going
a
to be?
surprise. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's some pretty bad storytelling this season. I think it's
Yeah.
really choppy. I think the editing's weird. I think that they're just kind of like not really showing us important things. Like I'm not invested in most of these women's stories. And so that's kind of on them to make us feel anything for these people. And I just don't think they did it,
Mm-hmm.
But
agree.
especially with what we're about to talk about next, which is Rachel.
All
I
right.
think that Rachel, like I said, the way she talks about Matt, the way she talks about like, oh, if he doesn't pick me, I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. Like that type of drama that she says, in terms of her connection with Matt, I just don't see it. I don't see where it comes from. I've never seen them connect. I've never seen them have an important conversation. He relates to Bree about the dad. He relates to Michelle about a lot of different things. That I kind of know how he relates to most of these women. And his front runner is the one that I just don't understand what they have in common other than being beautiful.
They're both
Yeah.
from the South, so
Okay.
Yeah.
They
know.
both have eyeballs.
they both understand what grits are. You know?
Yep,
Mhm.
yep.
That's a lot of stuff right there.
Sweet
That's
tea.
a lot. A
Sweet
lot.
tea.
A lot. Mm-hmm.
Sweet tea,
You know-
exactly.
You know what? I think it is that, and this is stealing a Tina Fey phrase again, so I apologize, but they're both hot idiots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't
Yeah.
get the feeling that Michelle is. Michelle is really smart and really sensitive.
She's
Yeah.
really level-headed.
Brie is
Yeah.
very intuitive and
Mhm.
emotionally connective, you know, and Rachel, I just felt was just kind of empty.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like she was just kind of saying what she thought she was supposed to say on The Bachelor. Like,
Mm.
I didn't get the
Yeah.
sense that the stuff that we were hearing from her was real.
Mm-hmm.
And I get the sense that she's just maybe a pretty competitive person and just has a really, like, fierce intensity about winning. You know
Oh
what
my
I mean?
God, you guys,
Rough.
this is reality shows freak me out a little bit because like I'm judging other people all the time
Yeah.
Yeah.
watching
Yeah.
these shows, and it feels so weird, I gotta say.
I mean,
And, like-
my take on Rich is she is genuine, but Snax, you're right. Like the whole thing is like an inch thick. But I don't think she's laying any of it on. I think she really does.
She believes it.
In this moment, she believes it. And she was
Yeah.
like, if I don't wind up with Matt, I don't know what I'll do with the rest of my life. Well, you'll continue to be a very attractive young woman. Everything's going to be okay. But,
Right. And I guess also because she is 23, 24,
yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, that's your emotions are way higher. I remember that period. I was in love with everybody,
Right.
Yeah.
you know.
True.
I
It was
just
harder
wanted
to get over people back then too.
Yeah,
And
totally.
I really am.
Yeah.
I really am. Like this whole episode, I found myself really empathizing with all three of the girls in the walk of shame feedbacks, and like
Yeah.
putting myself in that position, remembering being in new relationships where you feel like this person is your whole world, and like, what if I were in a situation where another two women were telling me how great it was to bang this dude?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I came out of it. I do have empathy for Rachel, but I have empathy for all three of the girls.
I felt like Rachel, I think she really, she was upset, visibly upset. And I do believe those tears
Yeah.
because I don't think that this process is for everybody. And I think I would lose my mind thinking like, she's like, the worst thing I can picture is Matt spending the night with somebody else. That's
Yeah.
relatable. I can relate to that. I don't relate to her racism, but
Yeah.
like that part of it. I'm like, I do believe that she's having a hard time with it.
Yeah.
And you
Sure.
see that,
Yeah.
at least that, but
Yeah. Yeah.
Well-
I think it's probably real for her on some level. Yeah.
Think about this. Like he did respond to her when she said, "I love you."
Yes.
yeah, she
And,
was the only one.
Like, and she and to know like. And like, so in that moment, she was like, I fucking got this. I fucking got this.
Well, she
And
doesn't
then-
know that he didn't say that to the other girls, though.
True.
Yeah.
Mm.
But I think she had a sense. And then to know that he then went on and had sex with these other two women and said whatever he did or didn't say, I mean, that hurts. That hurts and that feels bad.
I agree, and I think that I always imagine how this process must feel like while you're doing it, and then afterwards when you watch the entire season, and you get to
Right.
see all of his dates with all of the women and all the things they do. That's just a whole other layer of this crazy torture that is this show, and but I agree with you. Having to sit around with other women that are dating the same man that you're trying to actually marry is really stressful, and especially when you like those women as much as you do, because they're not just women; they're people that you probably really like.
How
They're
many
people you
steps-
have like Stockholm syndrome with. You're all in the same torture. You're all in the same place.
Yeah.
yeah. One thing he said on that date, he's like, when I'm with you, you're the only one I'm thinking about.
Wow.
Wow.
that means you're
panty
paying
dropper.
Woo! You pay
Take me
attention to
now.
women. Wow.
Yeah, that was weird to me. I was like, oh, okay. And then they had that whole like ghost scene where they're doing the ceramics. Are we
Okay,
gonna
there
talk
was a
Yeah.
moment in that
Yeah.
where Rachel was saying, you were just with other women. And right after she said that, the editors cut to them doing pottery. And in the background,
That
the
noise.
pottery instructor was saying, you put your finger in the hole. At that very moment.
Yeah. That was such an awkward scene because she did not want to be there. She's losing control over the clay. She's losing control over her mind. And she just wants to
get the
have
reference to Ghost. She's too young to get the reference.
She doesn't know what Ghost is.
She doesn't know what
She
Ghost
doesn't know who
is.
Patrick Swayze is, ladies.
Yeah,
Man,
she doesn't fucking know Ghost.
I knew that Shelley was
doesn't know-
haunted.
She just knows Demi Moore through Ashton Kutcher. That's it.
Yeah.
The cooch.
The cooch. But I felt like it was a weird way to start because it was such a heavy scene when they're walking in the woods. And then they go to this like pottery thing with this like awkward kind of like loose linens kind of woman who's just like, we're going to make ceramics. And she's like, I don't want to do this right now. And then she's like, the clay is going everywhere. It was a hot mess.
I think a much better date would have been drinking some booch with the cooch.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and then the weird like clay spattered makeout felt very staged.
Yeah.
Because we'd already seen them cleaned up and doing other things, and then there's this shot of them like covered in slip, like making out. I'm like, this is not what passion looks like, bro.
That was just the butter a couple of days later.
Right.
God.
Yeah. I kind of love the ceramics instructor. Like she kind of made it for me because she's like pounding the clay because she's like she really wants them to engage with this clay, but they were not.
What improv troupe do you think she's in?
I just want
Felt like West.
Someday I want one of those walk-on roles for this show. I want to be the weird masseuse or the person who's making apple pies or ceramics or whatever is happening. I just want to be that extra who's just like you know in Pee-wee's Big Adventure when he's the bellhop and he's like in the background like stealing the
Paging Mr. Herman. Snax, I see you as entering a scene and saying, welcome to Colonial Williamsburg. Like that's what I see.
Do I sound like that?
And we get you guys doing something like that.
Welcome to Colonial Williamsburg.
Welcome to Colonial Williamsburg.
I really want to see that now.
Yeah.
I really hope your stocks are going up.
So at the end of this date,
Yeah.
listening to the two of them talk back and forth,
Yeah.
I'm going to credit my wife with this quote. She gives me all the funniest quotes, but she said that date was like being drowned in a thimble full of emotion.
Oh. What would be inside the thimble though?
Just the emotions are there's about
emotions.
a thimble of emotions, but you just get your face shoved in it over and over and over
I see.
again, which is what their conversation felt like.
Yeah.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When a woman is on dates, you're supposed to date 2 and 3 people, but I have always got to a point where I'm at my maximum and I keep fucking up people's stories. And I'm like, oh, we were talking the other day about this, and the guy's like, that's one of the other guys.
And it's 35 is the maximum, right?
Yeah.
35
As much as
is
your
the
head.
maximum. Exactly. Like when I've been single and out on these streets, 3 is the maximum people that I can deal with, and I will do it badly. And that's something I kept thinking about during this episode. Like, he's really trying to create the illusion of investment with 3 people. And how disingenuous it feels on both sides.
Yeah. He's looking for that clarity. He talked about clarity a lot.
Yeah.
Needs
What
that
does
clarity.
that commitment look like?
What does it look
What does
like?
it look like?
What does it look like?
Then we get to the rose ceremony.
The rose ceremony.
And this was your first rose ceremony that you guys have ever seen, or maybe you had seen clips of it. I was sad to watch Brie get sent home but I thought she handled it so magnificently well, and how she just very lightly cried and said, I can't be upset, I can't be angry.
I think that Matt had the perfect line, and I can't believe nobody's ever used this line before, which was, it's not you, it's me.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I know.
I mean, I cried a little bit in that moment for him, you know.
No. When Rachel walks up to the rose ceremony, Chris Harrison's like, Rach, like, hey, Rach. I'm like, you guys are on a Rach basis?
Rach base.
They're on a Rach base.
I think he's the king of gaslighting. He's had a clear path. Cut out the women who are calling other women hoes. Cut out the women who have had no lines. So this is a hard time where he has to cut out women who haven't done anything wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and like that's a weird vibe. Like, Bree, you didn't do anything wrong, but you didn't do anything right enough.
Right. Yeah.
I have to send you home because we're on a television show, right?
Because I was only given these 2 roses, and I don't have another way to get another rose because they don't grow here.
Yeah. And then he's like, okay, I'll walk you to your car now.
He definitely does lean on walking someone out when he's done with the rejection conversation. And he's done that all season. It's like they start having a really painful goodbye conversation, and the minute it gets too much for him to bear, he's like, can I walk you out? It's like,
Can I go ahead? Got snacks. Sorry.
I just want to use that next time I'm in a conversation I'm uncomfortable with. It's just offer to walk the person out.
So can I walk you out? I will say this. When I've been on first dates that aren't working out, what I like to do is offer a handshake, and I make eye contact, and I say, thank you for meeting me out. And I feel like that's what Matt is doing. He's like,
Thank you for
absolutely.
your time. Yeah. Thank you for your feedback.
Thank you for your feedback. I'm going to walk you out to the Escalade.
You know what I'm really excited about is that when they were showing the preview for the next episode, is that I did not know that Matt's mother was Celine Dion.
Celine Dion, yeah.
It's incredible.
It's so incredible.
Who hid that spoiler for so long?
I know.
But yeah, no, she's clearly where where he got his height from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
His height will go on.
All right, well, let's do something fun. How about we construct a better fantasy suite date than they showed us this week? And now we'll keep the same setting. We're in Nemacolin, Pennsylvania. It's around winter time.
We
throw
need
some
to
stuff out. What do you think?
pizza.
Pizza, okay. I was thinking Pennsylvania Dutch-style pretzels.
Yeah.
Oh, pretzels.
Smart.
But isn't like the Hershey's? Isn't it Hershey's, Pennsylvania?
That's right, in Pennsylvania. Yeah.
You know, there is a Hershey Highway in Pennsylvania. They could go on a trip to the Hershey Highway.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay. And then they could do a haunted house. I liked your idea about a haunted house, Clinton.
Oh, thank you. I think that
a
would be
haunted house
fantastic.
because the adrenaline will bring them closer together.
Yep.
Yeah, they have to go through a haunted house in the middle of the woods in Pennsylvania during a
and
pandemic.
Maybe
would be
even a
fun.
haunted hayride.
Oh, have they done that
Okay.
on The Bachelor?
I don't know.
Here's my thought, and it's unorthodox.
Oh, okay.
Instead of having 3 fantasy suite dates in a row,
Yeah.
it's all 3 girls, 1 night, 1 winner. Fuck your way out. Who's willing to go the distance? Let's just take off take the gloves off, take the condoms off. Let's see who's really fucking serious.
Oh,
Get
boy.
people pregnant.
Wow.
Oh,
So
shit.
it's like a Thunderdome. Yeah.
There can only be one.
Okay, wow. This is a
Oh my
real
God.
fantasy suite.
Ooh.
date.
Can we
Wow.
replace Chris Harrison with Tina Turner and make it a Thunderdome?
Yes. I was
Oh.
going to say we need a musical act, and it's going to be Tina
Yeah.
Turner, Thunderdome
Yeah.
style. We did it. We made The Bachelor better.
We solved it. We solved
Solved
We
it.
solved it.
Solved
We
the
solved
problem.
it.
And a haunted hayride. I'm very excited about that part.
I'm happy about that too.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, thank you guys so much for
my
being
gosh.
on Buns and Roses. I loved having you on the show, and I'm so excited.
Wonderful.
The conclusion is next week. And for all of you listening and watching at home, please make sure you rate, review, and subscribe to Buns and Roses. Even though I probably won't be talking about Bachelor after next week, I'll be podcasting about something, and it's going to be great. And please follow me on social media at Free Snax. That's FREESNAX. And I'm also at freesnacks@gmail.com. And I want to take this moment to announce that I will be hosting Easteravaganza on Easter evening at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I will be live streaming a virtual variety show that's going to be Easter-tastic, and you might see some of the people on this fine panel represented in the show, if all goes well. And past Buns and Roses guests will be gracing your screens. So please save the date, Sunday, April 4th, Easter Sunday at 7 p.m. on my YouTube and on Twitch, the Snax Easteravaganza. Okay, until next week, keep your walls down, be vulnerable, and enjoy the journey. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take me down to the rose ceremony, the fantasy suites, holy matrimony.